The sound wasn't loud, just a quick, dry rip, but it echoed through Terminal 4 like a gunshot. In that split second, Brenda Miller, a flight attendant with 20 years of seniority, didn't just destroy a piece of paper, she destroyed her entire life. She stood there, smirking at the young black girl in the gray hoodie, convinced she was putting a fraud in her place. She had no idea that the girl she just humiliated didn't just have a first-class ticket. She had the last name painted on the side of the plane. This is the story of how arrogance met the ultimate karma at 30,000 feet. It was 6:45 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday in November at JFK International Airport. The air inside the terminal was thick, with the smell of stale coffee, damp wool, and the invisible, vibrating stress of 3,000 people trying to get somewhere else. For Maya Sterling, somewhere else was London. At 22 years old, Maya didn't look like the heiress to a multi-billion-dollar transportation empire. She looked like an art student who had pulled 3 consecutive all-nighters, which was exactly what she was. Dressed in an oversized heather gray hoodie she'd bought from a vintage shop in Brooklyn, black leggings that had seen better days, and worn-out Converse sneakers, she blended seamlessly into the background of weary travelers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she clutched a battered leather sketchbook against her chest like a shield. She wasn't flying private today. That was her father's world, not hers. Marcus Sterling, the CEO and founder of Sterling Airways, had offered her the corporate jet, but Maya had declined. She preferred the anonymity of commercial travel. She liked watching people. She liked the hum of the engine. She liked feeling normal. However, because her father was Marcus Sterling, normal came with caveats. She was booked on Sterling Airways Flight SA-909 to Heathrow, Seat 1A, first class. It was the only concession she allowed her father to make for her safety and comfort. Maya adjusted her backpack and approached the gate. Gate B32 was a chaotic scene. The economy boarding zones were already forming snaking lines of impatient tourists and tired business travelers. The priority lane, marked by a plush red carpet and velvet ropes, was empty, save for the 2 gate agents frantically typing at their podiums, and 1 senior flight attendant standing guard with the posture of a drill sergeant. That flight attendant was Brenda Miller. Brenda was 54 years old, and she wore her Sterling Airways uniform not like clothing, but like armor. Her navy blue blazer was buttoned tight, her scarf was knotted with geometric precision, and her blonde hair was lacquered into a bob that defied gravity. Brenda didn't just work for the airline. She felt she was the airline. She had been flying since the days when smoking was allowed on board, and she had developed a 6th sense for trouble. To Brenda, trouble usually meant anyone who didn't fit her specific idea of what a first-class passenger should look like. Trouble was anyone young, anyone underdressed, and, unfortunately, anyone who looked like Maya. Maya stepped onto the red carpet of the priority lane. She was exhausted. She just wanted to sit down, put on her noise-canceling headphones, and sleep for 7 hours. "Excuse me," a sharp voice cut through the ambient noise. Maya stopped and looked up. Brenda Miller had stepped directly into her path, a manicured hand raised in a stop motion. Her eyes, cold and blue, swept over Maya's hoodie and sneakers with undisguised disdain. "Yeah?" Maya said, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. "The economy line is over there," Brenda said, pointing a long, red-nailed finger toward the chaotic mass of people near the windows. She didn't smile. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Maya blinked, confused. "Oh, I know, I'm just trying to board. I'm in first." Brenda let out a short, derisive puff of air that might have been a laugh in another life. "First class is for priority passengers, miss. Zone 1 only. Zone 4 and 5 board last." "I know," Maya repeated, shifting her weight. The sketchbook was heavy. "I'm in Zone 1, Seat 1A. Brenda didn't move. She crossed her arms over her chest, blocking the entrance to the jet bridge. "Miss, I am going to ask you nicely to step aside. We have actual first-class passengers trying to board, and you are clogging up the premium lane." Maya looked around. The lane behind her was empty. "There's no one behind me," Maya said, trying to keep her temper in check. Her father had taught her to always be respectful to staff, reminding her that they were the backbone of the company. "Don't be the entitled rich kid," he always said. "Be kind." "I have my boarding pass right here," Maya said, reaching for her phone. "I don't need to see a screenshot you doctored on Photoshop," Brenda snapped, her voice raising just enough for the nearby passengers in the economy line to hear. Heads began to turn. "I've seen it all, sweetheart. Students buying economy tickets and trying to sneak into the pods for Instagram photos. It's not happening on my flight. Not today." Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks. It wasn't embarrassment. It was the slow burn of injustice. "I didn't doctor anything. If you just scan it—" "I said, step aside." Brenda's voice cracked like a whip. A man in a bespoke suit, standing a few feet away in the pre-check area, frowned and stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" Brenda's face instantly transformed. The scowl vanished, replaced by a sycophantic, sugary smile. "I'm so sorry for the delay, Mr. Henderson. Just dealing with some spillover from economy. Please, come right through." She ushered the man past Maya. As he passed, he gave Maya a sympathetic, confused look, but he didn't stop. He boarded. Maya stood her ground. "I'm not moving," she said quietly. "I paid for this ticket. Well, technically my dad did, but it's my seat." Brenda turned back to Maya, the smile instantly vanishing. The mention of Dad paying for it seemed to trigger something ugly in her. "Listen to me, you little brat," Brenda hissed, stepping into Maya's personal space. "I have been working this gate for 20 years. I know what a first-class passenger looks like. They wear suits. They carry briefcases. They don't look like they just rolled out of a shelter in the Bronx. Now get to the back of the line or I'm calling security." Maya took a deep breath. She reached into the front pocket of her hoodie. "What are you doing?" Brenda shouted, flinching back. "Don't reach for anything." "My paper ticket," Maya said calmly, pulling out the printed boarding pass with the gold Sterling Airways header. "You said my phone was fake. Here, the physical copy." She held it out. It was a valid, first-class boarding pass. Name, M. Sterling. Route, JFK to LHR. Seat, 1A. Brenda looked at the ticket. Then she looked at Maya. A rational person would have apologized. A rational person would have realized their mistake. But Brenda Miller was not operating on rationality. She was operating on ego. She had already made a scene. She had already decided this girl was a fraud. To admit she was wrong now, in front of the gathering crowd, was impossible for her. She snatched the ticket from Maya's hand. The fluorescent lights of Terminal 4 seemed to hum louder, intensifying the headache throbbing behind Maya's eyes. She watched Brenda hold the ticket up to the light, squinting at it as if trying to find the invisible ink that would prove it was a forgery. "Where did you steal this?" Brenda asked. Her voice was dangerously low. Maya's mouth fell open. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Brenda said, her eyes narrowing. "Tickets like this cost $12,000. People like you." She gestured vaguely at Maya's entire existence. "Don't just walk up with these. Did you find it on the floor? Did you snatch it from a businessman's bag in the lounge?" "That is my name on the ticket," Maya said, her voice hardening. The be kind rule was rapidly evaporating. "M. Sterling, that's me." "Sure it is," Brenda scoffed. "And I'm the Queen of England. M. Sterling probably stands for Mary or Michelle, or maybe you just printed this off a home computer." "Scan it," Maya enunciated every word. "I don't have to scan garbage," Brenda spat. By now, the commotion had drawn a significant audience. The line for economy had stopped moving. People were holding up their phones. The red recording lights were blinking. A young guy in a Knicks jersey was live-streaming the whole thing from 10 feet away. "Miss," the gate agent behind the podium, a younger woman named Sarah, spoke up nervously. "Brenda, maybe we should just scan it. The system will tell us if it's valid." "Stay out of this, Sarah," Brenda snapped without looking back. "I'm handling security protocols. We can't let potential stowaways onto the jet bridge. It's a safety violation." She turned back to Maya, a cruel glint in her eye. You want to play games? Fine. Let's see how you board without this. Brenda took the thick, premium cardstock of the first-class boarding pass in both hands. She maintained eye contact with Maya, a smirk curling her lip. Then she ripped it. R-R-R-R-I-P. The sound was distinct. It silenced the murmurs of the crowd. She didn't stop there. She tore it in half again and again, until the $12,000 ticket was nothing more than gold and white confetti in her hands. She opened her palms and let the pieces flutter down to the red carpet, right onto Maya's battered Converse sneakers. "Oops," Brenda said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Looks like you don't have a ticket anymore, which means you're loitering in a secure area. Goodbye." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Maya looked down at the shredded paper. She looked at the pieces of her name, Stir, Ling, scattered on the floor. Something inside Maya shifted. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a cold, diamond-hard clarity. She wasn't sad. She wasn't even angry anymore. She was focused. She slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She didn't open the Airline app. She didn't open her camera. She opened her contacts. "You made a mistake," Maya said softly. "The only mistake was you thinking you could get past me." Brenda gloated, crossing her arms. "Now, move, before I call the police." "You won't need to call them," Maya said, tapping the screen. "But you might want to call your union representative." "Is that a threat?" Brenda laughed, playing to the crowd. "She's threatening me now. Did you all hear that?" "It's not a threat," Maya said, holding the phone to her ear. "It's a notification." "Get security!" Brenda yelled to Sarah. "Now! This passenger is belligerent!" As Sarah scrambled for the landline, 2 TSA officers who had been monitoring the perimeter began to jog over. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. The Karen at the gate had just gone nuclear, and everyone wanted to see the fallout. Maya didn't flinch as the heavy-set security guards approached. She just waited for the call to connect. "Security!" Brenda pointed a shaking finger at Maya. "Remove her! She's trespassing and threatening flight crew." One of the officers, a man named Officer Miller, no relation, though the irony wasn't lost on the universe, reached for Maya's arm. "Miss, you need to come with us." Maya held up a hand, dodging his grip. "1 second. Miss, put the phone down." "Hello?" A deep, gravelly voice answered on the other end of the line. It was a voice that usually commanded boardrooms and silent stock floors. "Hi, Dad," Maya said, her eyes locked on Brenda's smug face. "Maya? Everything okay? You should be boarding by now." Marcus Sterling's voice was warm, but edged with immediate concern at her tone. "I'm trying to," Maya said. "But the flight attendant at gate B32 just ripped up my ticket." There was a silence on the other end of the line. A silence that was heavier than the one in the terminal. "She did what?" Marcus asked. The warmth was gone. The CEO was present. "She ripped it up. She said I stole it. She said I don't look like I belong in first class. And now she's having security arrest me." Brenda, hearing this, rolled her eyes so hard it looked painful. "Oh, look at that. She's calling Daddy. Pathetic." "Put her on," Marcus said. His voice was low, like the rumble of thunder before a storm. "She won't talk to you," Maya said. "She thinks you're fake." "Put her on." Maya pulled the phone away from her ear and held it out to Brenda. "He wants to talk to you." Brenda laughed. It was a harsh, cackling sound. "I am not talking to your boyfriend or your dad or whoever you hired to act on the phone." "Get her out of here," she screamed at the officers. Officer Miller grabbed Maya's arm firmly. "That's enough, miss. You're causing a disturbance." "Wait," Maya shouted, pulling back. She pressed the speakerphone button. "Just listen!" "This is Marcus Sterling." The voice boomed from the phone, loud enough for Brenda and the officers to hear. "I am the CEO of this airline. Who am I speaking to?" Brenda froze. Her eyes flickered for a second. The voice. It sounded familiar. She had heard it on the mandatory corporate training videos every year for 2 decades. But her pride was a fortress, and she had locked the gates. "Nice try," Brenda sneered, leaning in close to the phone. "And I'm Oprah Winfrey." "You're engaging in fraud, sir, and you're going to be reported to the FBI along with this little girl." She reached out and hit the red "End Call" button on Maya's screen. The line went dead. Brenda looked at Maya, a victorious grin stretching across her face. "Call over!" "Game over. Get her out of my sight." As the officers dragged Maya backward away from the gate and toward the sterile corridor of the holding area, Maya didn't struggle. She just looked at Brenda with a strange expression. It wasn't fear. It was pity. "You shouldn't have hung up on him," Maya said quietly as she was hauled away. Brenda dusted her hands off, as if cleaning away dirt. She turned to the stunned line of economy passengers. "All right, folks." She clapped her hands, her voice bright and fake. "Show's over. Who's next for inspection? Have your boarding passes ready, and make sure they're real." She thought she had won. She thought she had just taken out the trash. She didn't know that 3,000 miles away, in a glass-walled office in Chicago, Marcus Sterling was slowly putting his phone down on his mahogany desk. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't throwing things. He was eerily calm. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Get the jet ready," Marcus said to his assistant, "and get me the airport director at JFK on the secure line, now." Back at Gate B32, Brenda Miller checked her watch. She had a flight to catch. She adjusted her scarf, feeling powerful. She had about 45 minutes of power left. The walk from Gate B32 to the airport security substation was less than 500 yards, but for Maya, it felt like a mile-long gauntlet. The airport had gone quiet around them, a bubble of silence created by the presence of two uniformed officers dragging a young woman in a hoodie through the terminal. But outside that bubble, the digital eyes were watching. Phones were raised like lighters at a concert. Maya saw the flashes. She saw the teenagers whispering and pointing. She saw a woman shaking her head, muttering something about kids these days. They all saw a criminal. They saw a scammer who had gotten caught. Maya kept her head high, though her wrists burned where Officer Miller held her arm. She wasn't handcuffed, not yet, but the grip was firm enough to leave a bruise. They pushed through a heavy steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The noise of the terminal, the announcements, the rolling suitcases, the chatter, was instantly cut off, replaced by the low, menacing hum of industrial air conditioning and the smell of floor wax and stale coffee. They led her into Room C. It was a small, windowless box with cinder-block walls painted a depressing shade of beige. In the center was a bolted-down metal table and 3 chairs. In the corner, a security camera blinked with a slow, rhythmic red light. "Sit," Officer Miller commanded. He was a heavy-set man with a mustache that had seen better decades. He wasn't inherently evil, but he was tired. He was at the end of a double shift, and he had just dealt with a drunk passenger in Terminal 2. He wanted this to be an open-and-shut case of fraud. Maya sat. She placed her hands on the cold metal table. She didn't slouch. She sat with the posture her mother had drilled into her during piano recitals. The second officer, a younger man named Officer Daniels who seemed eager to prove himself, leaned against the door, blocking the exit. "All right," Miller sighed, dropping into the chair opposite her. He pulled out a notepad. "Let's make this easy. You give us your real name, tell us where you got the fake boarding pass, and maybe we don't book you for federal trespassing. We just bang you from the airport and call your parents to pick you up." Maya looked at him calmly. "I already told you my real name. It's Maya Sterling." Daniels snorted from the doorway. "Right, and I'm Derek Jeter. Look, kid, we spoke to the flight attendant. Brenda Miller. She's a senior purser. She's been with Sterling Airways for 20 years. She knows what a forged ticket looks like. She said you were belligerent and refused to leave the priority lane." "She ripped up my ticket," Maya said. "She destroyed my property." "That is a federal offense, isn't it? Interfering with a passenger?" "It was a fake ticket," Miller said, slamming his hand on the table. The noise echoed in the small room. "It's trash. It's literal garbage. Now ID, hand it over." Maya reached into her back pocket. She pulled out a simple leather card holder. She slid her driver's license across the table. Miller picked it up. He looked at the photo. It was a clear match. Maya Sterling. Address: a penthouse in Manhattan that Miller knew cost more than he would make in 10 lifetimes. He frowned. Okay, so the name is real. But that doesn't mean the ticket was. Anyone can print a boarding pass at home. Run it, Maya said. Run my name through the DHS system, or just call the Sterling Airways corporate liaison. I'm not calling corporate for a shoplifter, Miller grumbled. He stood up. Daniels, watch her. I'm going to run this license and see if she has any priors. Probably has a history of fraud. Miller walked out, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. The room fell silent. Daniels stared at Maya. Maya stared at the security camera. She wondered if her father was watching yet. Probably not. The feeds in these rooms were local. But he would be making calls. Marcus Sterling was a man who moved mountains when he was inconvenienced. When his daughter was threatened, he moved tectonic plates. 5 minutes passed. Then, 10. Maya closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing. She thought about Brenda. She wondered if the plane had taken off. She hoped it hadn't. She wanted Brenda to be there when the hammer fell. Suddenly, the door flew open. It wasn't Officer Miller. It was a woman in a white shirt with gold bars on the shoulders, the shift commander. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and frantic. Officer Miller was right behind her, looking like he had just seen a ghost. "Uncross your arms, Daniels," the commander barked. Daniels jumped, confused. "Ma'am? She's the suspect from—" "She is not a suspect!" The commander rushed to the table. She didn't sit. She stood at attention. "Miss Sterling, I am so incredibly sorry." Maya opened her eyes. She didn't smile. "Did you run my ID?" Miller stepped forward, his voice shaking. He was holding a printout. "I ran it. It flagged." It didn't just flag for no priors. It flagged a code gold. Code gold. The highest security clearance for a civilian traveler in the airport database. It was reserved for diplomats, high-ranking government officials, and, of course, the owners of the major airlines that operated out of the terminal. It meant do not touch. Do not delay. Assist immediately. "I tried to tell you," Maya said softly. "I tried to tell Brenda." We know," the commander said, wringing her hands. "We just got a call from the airport director, and, well, apparently the governor of New York is on hold on line 2. The color drained from Daniel's face. He looked at Maya, then at the door, looking for an escape route. "You are free to go, obviously," the commander said, gesturing to the open door. "We can escort you to a VIP lounge. We can get you a private car. Anything you need." Maya stood up slowly. She smoothed out her hoodie. "I don't want a lounge," Maya said. "I have a flight to catch. Flight SA 909 to London." Miller grimaced. "Ms. Sterling, that flight, the doors are probably closed. It's been 40 minutes. "The doors aren't closed," Maya said with absolute certainty. "My father is Marcus Sterling. That plane isn't going anywhere until I'm on it." She looked at Officer Miller. "I want you to escort me back to the gate. And I want you to bring the body cam footage from your interaction with me, and the security footage from the gate." "We can't just release footage without a warrant," Miller started, falling back on protocol. "My father's lawyers will have a warrant on your desk in 5 minutes, Maya cut him off. "But if you want to keep your job, you'll walk me back to gate B32 right now. I want to finish my conversation with Brenda." The commander looked at Miller. "Do it. Take her back." And Miller, "Yes, ma'am?" "If anyone stops her, you arrest them." On board Flight SA 909, the atmosphere in first class was one of refined luxury, overlaid with a growing tension. Brenda Miller was in the forward galley, aggressively organizing the beverage cart. She felt a buzz of adrenaline, a high that came from protecting the integrity of the cabin. In her mind, she was the hero. She had spotted a threat, a scruffy, disrespectful girl trying to game the system, and she had neutralized it. She glanced into the cabin. There were 12 first-class pods. 11 were occupied. Seat 1A was empty. Good riddance, Brenda muttered to herself. She walked down the aisle, pouring champagne for Mr. Henderson in 2A. "Here we go, Mr. Henderson," a little pre-departure bubbly. "Sorry about the ruckus at the gate," Brenda said, her voice dripping with professional sweetness. Mr. Henderson, a hedge fund manager who flew this route weekly, frowned. "That was a bit intense, Brenda. Are you sure she didn't have a ticket? She seemed pretty insistent." "Trust me," Brenda winked, leaning in conspiratorially. "I've got a radar for these things. Probably a stolen credit card or a Photoshop job. You have to be careful these days. If we let her on, next thing you know, she's live streaming loudly or harassing the paying customers. I did it for you folks." Mr. Henderson took the glass but didn't drink. "Well, thanks, I guess. When are we pushing back?" "It's 7:15. Brenda checked her watch. He was right. They were 15 minutes past schedule. The cabin doors were closed. The jet bridge had been pulled back. But the tug hadn't engaged. The engines hadn't spooled up. "Just a minor ATC hold, I'm sure." Brenda lied smoothly. "JFK traffic. You know how it is. We'll be in the air in no time." She walked back to the galley where Sarah, the junior flight attendant, was chewing her lip nervously. "Brenda," Sarah whispered, "the pilot. Captain Anderson just called on the interphone. He sounds weird." "Weird how?" Brenda snapped, checking her reflection in the metal coffee pot. "He said we're in a hard hold. He said the order came from Chicago. From HQ." Brenda paused. A flicker of unease pricked at the back of her neck, but she swatted it away. "Probably a paperwork issue, or maybe a cargo weight discrepancy. It happens." "He asked if we had a passenger count discrepancy," Sarah continued. "He asked specifically about seat 1A. Brenda rolled her eyes. "I told the gate agent to wipe 1A from the manifest. It's a no-show. I handled it." "Did you file an incident report?" Sarah asked. "I'll do it in the air." Brenda waved her off. "Stop panicking. You're new. You get spooked too easily. Go offer the warm nuts to row 3. The minutes ticked by. 7:25 p.m. 7:35 p.m. The grumbling in the cabin grew louder. In economy, babies started crying. In first class, laptops were being snapped shut in irritation. Then, the PA system crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Anderson from the flight deck." The pilot's voice was tight, lacking the usual "welcome aboard" warmth. "We apologize for the delay. We have been ordered by our operations center to hold our position at the gate. We are waiting for a late-arriving passenger." Brenda froze. A late-arriving passenger? That was impossible. Once the doors were closed, they were closed. Sterling Airways had a strict policy, on-time departures above all else. They never held a jumbo jet for one person. "Who the hell is coming?" Brenda hissed to Sarah. "The president?" Suddenly there was a mechanical whirring sound. A heavy thud echoed through the fuselage. The passengers looked around. "Is that the jet bridge?" Mr. Henderson asked. "Are they reconnecting the bridge?" Brenda felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Reconnecting the jet bridge, after the doors were armed, was a massive ordeal. It cost thousands in fines. It delayed the flight by an hour. It was only done for medical emergencies or security threats. She rushed to the L one-door window and peered out. Sure enough, the accordion-style tunnel of the jet bridge was moving back toward the plane. "What is going on?" Brenda demanded, grabbing the interphone handset to call the cockpit. "Captain, why are we redocking?" "Open the door, Brenda!" Captain Anderson's voice was grim. "But—" "Open the door now! That is a direct order." Brenda slammed the phone down. Her hands were shaking slightly as she disarmed the slide and rotated the heavy handle. The door swung open. She expected to see paramedics. Or maybe federal marshals, coming to arrest someone on board. Instead, she saw the airport station manager, a man named Mr. Clarks, whom she had only seen once at a holiday party. He looked terrified. And standing next to him, flanked by the 2 police officers who had dragged her away an hour ago, was the girl. The girl in the gray hoodie. The girl with the fake ticket. Maya stood at the threshold of the plane. She wasn't holding a ticket anymore. She was holding her phone, and the camera was pointed directly at Brenda's face. Brenda blinked, her brain struggling to process the image. You? How did you get back here? This is a security breach. She stepped forward to block the aisle, her instincts kicking in. I don't know who let you through, but you are not getting on this plane. Officers, why are you bringing her back? Officer Miller stepped forward. He didn't look at Brenda with respect anymore. He looked at her like she was a radioactive isotope. Step aside, Ms. Miller, Officer Miller said. I will not, Brenda shrieked. The veneer of the professional flight attendant cracked completely. She is a fraud! She is trash! I ripped her ticket because she doesn't belong here! Brenda, Mr. Clark's the station manager said. His voice was trembling. Stop talking! I'm protecting this airline! Brenda yelled, gesturing to the baffled first-class passengers. I am protecting our premium customers from her! That her, a voice boomed from inside the plane. Captain Anderson had emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall man with gray hair and 4 stripes on his shoulders. He walked into the galley, his face pale with fury. He looked at Brenda. Then he looked at Maya. He bypassed Brenda completely and bowed his head slightly to the girl in the hoodie. Miss Sterling, the captain said, his voice carrying through the silent cabin. I am deeply, deeply sorry for this. I had no idea you were at the gate. If I had known... Brenda felt the blood stop moving in her veins. Ms. Sterling. She looked at the girl. She looked at the captain. Sterling? Brenda whispered. The word felt like broken glass in her mouth. Maya lowered her phone. She stepped onto the plane. She didn't look at the captain. She looked directly at Brenda. You didn't rip up a ticket because it was fake, Brenda, Maya said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of the cabin it sounded like a judge delivering a verdict. You ripped it up because you didn't think I looked like I deserved it. You called me trash. You called me a fraud. Maya took a step closer. Brenda stumbled back, hitting the galley counter. My father is on the phone with the board of directors right now, Maya said calmly. But he wanted me to give you a message personally. Your father? Brenda stammered. Her eyes darted around the cabin. The passengers were staring. Mr. Henderson's mouth was hanging open. Sarah was shrinking into the corner. Marcus Sterling, Maya said. You know him? He signs your paychecks. The realization hit Brenda like a physical blow. The knees of her perfectly pressed uniform buckled. She grabbed the counter to stay upright. The name painted on the side of the plane. The name on the stationery. The name she had worn on her badge for 20 years. I didn't know, Brenda gasped, tears of panic springing to her eyes. Miss Sterling, I was just doing my job. I was trying to be safe. It was a misunderstanding. If you had just told me. I did tell you. Maya cut her off. I showed you the ticket. You ripped it up. I tried to call him. You hung up on him. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the pieces of the ticket that she had picked up off the floor of the terminal before the police dragged her away. She held out the confetti like shreds. Here, Maya said. You said this was trash. You can have it. She opened her hand and let the torn pieces fall onto Brenda's impeccably polished shoes. Now, Maya said, looking at the captain, I believe seat 1A is mine, lest Brenda here thinks I'm still trespassing. Seat 1A is yours, Miss Sterling, the captain said. He turned to Brenda. His voice went from deferential to icy cold. Pack your bag, Brenda. What? Brenda choked out. You are relieved of duty, the captain said. Get off my plane, now. You can't. I have to work this flight home, Brenda pleaded, looking for an ally. She looked at Mr. Henderson. He looked away. She looked at Sarah. Sarah was studying the floor. You aren't working this flight, Maya said, stepping past her toward seat 1A. And looking at the email my dad just CC'd me on, you aren't working any flight, ever again. The silence inside the cabin of Flight SA 909 was heavier than the pressurized steel hull itself. It was a suffocating, dense silence that pressed against Brenda Miller's eardrums, louder than any scream she had ever heard. For 20 years, Brenda had treated the aisle of an airplane like her personal runway. She walked it with authority, with chin held high, knowing she held the keys to the liquor cabinet and the power to make a passenger's flight miserable or magical. She was the queen of the sky. But now, standing in the galley with the shredded remains of Maya Sterling's ticket at her feet, she wasn't a queen. She was an intruder. "Did you hear me, Brenda?" Captain Anderson's voice wasn't shouting. It was a low, resonant baritone that vibrated through the floorboards. "I said, get your bag." Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. Her brain was misfiring, frantically trying to find a loophole, a regulation, a union bylaw, anything that could stop this nightmare. "Captain," she whispered, her voice cracking, "you can't do this. We are understaffed. If I leave, you'll be flying with one less crew member. That's a violation of the FAA minimum for a full passenger load. You need me." It was a desperate gamble. She was trying to use the rule book to save herself from the consequences of breaking the moral code. Captain Anderson didn't blink. He looked at Maya, who was already settling into seat 1A, placing her battered sketchbook on the side table of the luxurious pod. "Ms. Sterling," the captain asked, his voice softening, "do you require full meal service today?" Maya looked up. She saw Brenda trembling in the galley. She saw the terror in the older woman's eyes. Maya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just looked tired. "No, Captain," Maya said quietly. "I just want to sleep. I don't need any service." The captain turned back to Brenda, his face hard as granite. "We have a light load in first. Sarah can handle the cabin alone. And frankly, Brenda, I would rather fly this plane with 0 flight attendants and serve the coffee myself than have you wear that uniform for one more second on my watch. Get your bag." The finality of it hit Brenda like a physical slap. Slowly, painfully, she turned to the crew closet. Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't grip the handle of her roll-aboard suitcase. She fumbled with the latch, her fingernails scraping against the plastic. It took her 3 tries to pull it out. The sound of the suitcase wheels hitting the galley floor, thud-clack, echoed through the silent cabin. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, trying to summon one last shred of dignity. She grabbed the handle of her bag. She had to walk past the cockpit. She had to walk past the galley. And worst of all, she had to walk past the passengers. She took the first step. Mr. Henderson, in seat 2A, the man she had tried to conspire with, the man she had poured champagne for only minutes ago, was suddenly intensely interested in the safety instruction card. He held it up to his face, refusing to look at her. Mrs. Gable in 3F, a socialite who usually loved to gossip with the crew, turned her head toward the window, shielding her eyes with her hand, as if Brenda were a bright, painful light. They were shunning her. These were the people Brenda thought she was protecting. She had convinced herself that by keeping riffraff like Maya out, she was serving the elite, but the elite didn't want her protection. They were horrified by her cruelty. As she passed seat 1A, Brenda's feet felt like lead. She couldn't help it. She looked down. Maya was adjusting her noise-canceling headphones. She didn't look up. She didn't acknowledge Brenda's existence. Maya had already moved on. To Maya, Brenda was no longer a threat. She was just a memory. That indifference hurt more than any insult. Brenda stepped onto the threshold of the aircraft door. The cool air of the jet bridge hit her face. It smelled of jet fuel and damp concrete. The smell of the airport, a smell she usually loved. Now, it smelled like failure. Mr. Clarks, the station manager, was waiting for her on the metal platform of the bridge. He held a clipboard. "Give me your badge, Brenda," Mr. Clark said. His voice was devoid of sympathy. "I needed to get through security to the employee lot," Brenda stammered, clutching the plastic ID card clipped to her blazer. It was her identity. It was her access. "Officer Miller will escort you to the exit," Mr. Clark said, gesturing to the police officer standing behind him. "You are no longer an active employee of Sterling Airways. You are a civilian, and civilians don't wear badges." Brenda's hand went to her chest. She unclipped the badge. The pin left 2 tiny holes in the fabric of her navy blazer. She handed it over. "And the scarf," Mr. Clarks added. The Sterling Airways silk scarf, with the signature gold and blue pattern, was a symbol of seniority. Only pursers were allowed to wear that specific knot. Brenda's fingers fumbled at her neck. She untied the knot. She pulled the silk away from her skin. It felt like she was removing a layer of flesh. She handed the crumpled silk to the manager. "This isn't fair," Brenda whispered, the tears finally spilling over, wrecking her makeup. "I gave 20 years to this company. One mistake, and you erase me?" "It wasn't a mistake, Brenda," Mr. Clark said, turning his back on her. "It was a choice. Now go." Officer Miller, the same cop who had almost arrested Maya, stepped forward. He didn't look amused anymore. He looked bored. "Let's go, ma'am. Don't make me drag you." Brenda grabbed her suitcase. She began the long walk up the jet bridge. The incline felt like a mountain. The sound of her heels clicking on the metal floor was lonely and hollow. Behind her, she heard the heavy, mechanical whir-thunk of the aircraft door being closed. She stopped and looked back. The gap was gone. The plane was sealed. Through the small porthole window of the jet bridge, she watched as the tug began to push the massive Boeing 777 back from the gate. She saw the engines begin to spin, catching the light of the terminal floodlights. Inside that metal tube, champagne was being poured. Warm nuts were being served. And Maya Sterling was reclining in seat 1A, flying toward London. Brenda was standing in a cold tunnel in Queens, holding a handle that led nowhere. She walked into the terminal. The crowd at the gate had dispersed, but a few stragglers remained. As Brenda emerged, stripped of her scarf and badge, looking disheveled and crying, no one recognized her as the authority figure from before. They just saw a middle-aged woman, having a breakdown. She walked past the trash can where she had dumped the first half of Maya's ticket. It was empty. The janitors had already changed the bag. Her power was gone. Her legacy was gone. But she had one thought keeping her upright. At least it's over. "I'll get the union to fight this. It was just a localized incident. Nobody else needs to know." She pulled her phone out of her pocket to call her union representative. She had 50 notifications. Then 100. The phone vibrated so hard it almost slipped from her sweaty grip. Text messages from other flight attendants, emails from friends, alerts from news apps. She opened the first text. It was from a colleague named Janice. "Brenda, what did you do? You're on TMZ." Brenda's blood ran cold. She opened her browser. She typed in her airline's name. The top result wasn't the flight schedule, it was a video. "Karen, flight attendant, destroys black girl's ticket, doesn't know dad owns the airline." The video had 1.2 million views. It had been uploaded 45 minutes ago. Brenda pressed play. She watched herself, in high definition, screaming at Maya. She watched herself rip the ticket. She heard her own voice, shrill and cruel. "I don't have to scan garbage." She looked at the comments. There were thousands. "Fire her immediately. The audacity is insane. I'm never flying Sterling again until she's gone. Does she know who that is? That's Maya Sterling. I follow her art account." Brenda stood in the middle of Terminal 4, the busy airport swirling around her. She felt the floor tilt. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. While Brenda Miller was having a panic attack in the arrivals hall, Flight SA 909 was cruising peacefully at 35,000 feet. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted from tension to a deferential silence. Sarah, the junior flight attendant who had been too afraid to speak up earlier, approached Maya's pod. She timidly placed a glass of water on the tray table, along with a handwritten note from the cockpit. "I'm so sorry I didn't step in," Sarah whispered, her eyes wet with guilt. "I was just scared of her." "It's okay," Maya said softly, taking the note. "Hierarchy is hard to break." The note was from Captain Anderson. He had enabled the plane's Wi-Fi so Maya could see the news. Her father had already issued a statement. Maya connected her phone and navigated to the Sterling Airways homepage. A stark black banner greeted her. A message from CEO Marcus Sterling. Her father didn't use corporate jargon. He wrote that a passenger had been treated with disrespect, racial profiling, and aggression. He announced Brenda's immediate termination and a full third-party investigation. He ended the public letter with a personal note. To Maya, I love you, I'm sorry. Maya felt a lump in her throat. She texted him back a simple, I'm okay, and closed her eyes. But on the ground, the viral storm was upgrading to a hurricane. By the time the sun rose, the video of Brenda ripping the ticket had 15 million views. It was everywhere. In a suburban house in Long Island, Brenda sat at her kitchen table with the curtains drawn. News vans were camping on her lawn. Her husband Gary was pacing the floor, furious. "They aren't leaving, Brenda," Gary shouted. He threw his iPad onto the table. "And look at this. The airline isn't just firing you, they are suing you." Brenda stared at the screen. Sterling Airways sues former flight attendant for defamation. They were seeking damages for the reputational harm she had caused. "They can't do that," Brenda stammered. "I have the union." She grabbed the phone and called her union rep, Sheila, a woman she had known for 20 years. But Sheila's voice was ice cold. "We saw the body cam footage, Brenda," Sheila said. "The union protects against unfair dismissal. What you did, the aggression, the destruction of passenger property, falls under zero tolerance. You acted outside the scope of your employment. We cannot support you." The line went dead. Brenda dropped the phone. Gary looked at her, his face pale. "I can't do this," he said, grabbing his car keys. "My boss is already calling me. I'm going to stay at my sister's." "You're leaving me?" Brenda whispered. "You need to fix this," Gary said, walking out the back door to avoid the cameras. "But I don't think you can." Brenda was left alone in the silent kitchen, realizing that her 20-year career, her marriage, and her reputation had evaporated in less than 12 hours. Back on the plane, Flight SA-909 touched down at Heathrow. As the tires kissed the tarmac, Maya closed her sketchbook. During the flight, she had finally drawn something. A sketch of a girl in a hoodie wearing a crown made of torn ticket confetti. As the plane taxied to the gate, Maya looked out the window. The ground crew wasn't just working. They were standing in a line, waving up at the cockpit. They knew exactly who was on board. The secret was out. The undercover boss's daughter was undercover no more. 6 months had passed since the incident at Gate B32. Inside the District Court of New York, the atmosphere was freezing. Brenda Miller sat at the defendant's table, her arrogant uniform replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting suit. Opposite her sat Marcus Sterling himself. He had come personally to deliver the final blow. The lawsuit had mutated from simple defamation into something far darker. When Brenda's lawyer pleaded for leniency, claiming it was just a, quote, lapse in judgment due to stress, Marcus stood up to reveal the results of the airline's internal investigation. "Your Honor," Marcus boomed, "we found the ghost passenger." The courtroom murmured in confusion. Marcus explained the twist that silenced everyone. Brenda wasn't just prejudiced. She was a thief. For years, she had been running a scheme selling empty first-class seats to cash-paying passengers in the terminal and pocketing the money. On the night in question, she had already sold seat 1A to Mr. Henderson for $500. When Maya showed up with a valid ticket for that specific seat, Brenda panicked. She didn't rip the ticket because she thought it was fake. She ripped it to destroy the evidence of her own crime. She had accused Maya of fraud to cover up her own embezzlement. The judge's reaction was swift and merciless. Brenda was found liable for civil fraud, defamation, and emotional distress. The judgment was a bloodbath. Her pension was seized to repay the stolen funds, and she was ordered to pay $1.5 million in damages. She left the courthouse bankrupt, divorced, and disgraced. 1 year later, winter had returned to New York. Inside a grimy, fluorescent-lit truck stop diner off the Long Island Expressway, a waitress wiped down a sticky table. Her name tag read, Brenda. She looked 10 years older. Her feet ached, and her hands were chapped from washing dishes. The Queen of the Sky was now serving refills for tips she desperately needed. "Hey, coffee!" a trucker yelled. As Brenda poured the coffee, she glanced up at the TV in the corner. A morning talk show was interviewing a rising star in the art world, Maya Sterling. On the screen, Maya looked radiant in a navy blazer. She was promoting her new exhibit, Paper Trails, which featured a collage made from torn ticket confetti. "What would you say to the woman who tore that ticket?" the host asked. Maya smiled at the camera, her eyes warm but fierce. "I'd say that even if someone tears you apart, you can put yourself back together. And you should never judge a passenger by their hoodie." Brenda watched, transfixed. A single tear rolled down her cheek and landed in the trucker's coffee. She turned away from the screen, the noise of the diner swallowing her up. She had tried to ground Maya, but in the end, she had only grounded herself forever. And that is the story of how Brenda Miller learned the hardest lesson of her life. She thought her uniform gave her the right to judge others, but she forgot that karma always has a way of finding its destination. Brenda is still paying off her debt, one cup of coffee at a time, while Maya is painting the world with her colors. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this tale of instant karma and justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to hear more stories about entitled people getting exactly what they deserve, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. What would you have done if you were Maya? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, fly high, and be kind. See you in the next video.